Hello, family. You're listening to Bramble on Pod, and today we are getting into a place of darkness a little bit. And so we're here to learn. We're here to educate each one of us, and enjoy ourselves. All right. Imagine this: a government official just somewhere in Kenya, random, has just been given an envelope, and inside it is 50 million Kenyan shillings. If no receipts, no invoices, there's no paper trail to that. So if it was you, what can you do with it? These are some of the things that as a person who is into business, like you ought to be asking yourself every time, like because it happens every time. So if you receive right now 50 million Kenyan shilling, you don't just walk in with it and deposit in a bank or something, because that raises a flag. And you'll need to explain to the regulatory that has been placed. Where have you obtained such amount of money? No, so instead, what they do, they do what most corrupt actors do in the whole world. They run it through businesses, through buildings, through the fuel pumps and all that, so that at the end of the day, it comes out as a legit as a legitimate money. So today's episode is about money laundering and specifically how it works in Kenya, because this is something that it's happening right now. It's so happening. Money laundering, cleaning it, so that at the end of it all, you obtain some clean money. It is happening. So I'm Brian Bilon, and this is Brian Bilon Pod. So before we dive into Kenya specifically, actually, let's make sure that we are all on the same page, that we all understand what money laundering actually it is. In maybe most of us have heard money laundering out of a Netflix show. Yeah, we don't actually know what it is actually. We don't know what it entails, the processes that it entails nowadays. No, money laundering it's a process actually. It's a whole system that was created early in the 1920s. So it's a process of where like illegally obtained money, it's cleaned or washed, so that at the end of the day it appears legally obtained. So uh, money laundering, it originated as a in 1920s in, in in America, by a certain person that is I can say is one of the best people in businesses, because his name was called Al Capone. Al Capone was a gangster. He was a gangster actually, who operated criminal businesses. But at the end of the day, he makes sure, or he ensured that the illegal money that he obtained was clean. It was cleaned so that no one could could be able to trace it, where it came from and all that. So nowadays, the process actually works in three stages. We have the placement, we have the integration, we have the layering. Money laundering, it's both a simple and a sophisticated concept in this way. It occurs in three stages. The first stage, placement. This is the most critical and the most crucial stage for a criminal to operate. If you're operating in a money laundering scheme, this is the most difficult situation, because this is where the dirty cash first enters into the business or financial systems. It can raise flags. It can raise questions, a lot of questions from the bodies that has been placed by the government, to questions. So it can happen in two different ways. Number one, there's a technique called smurfing. This is where you split the large cash that you've received. Let's say, for example, you've received 10 million Kenyan shilling. You split that money into some small portion, and then you're going to deposit those those small amounts into different banks, into shell companies. I'll later on define what a shell company is and all that. You know, And another technique that one can use is you pump the large inflation of money, not inflation, but the large amount of money into large businesses or businesses that require high influx of money. You know, we have petrol station, we have real estate, we have hospitality businesses and all stuff. And number two, it's what we call layering. Now they start moving the money around through different multiple transactions. That now layering it tends to create a distance between the money and the origin, the origin, the criminal origin. This is where like you tend to block, yeah, you tend to block the suspicions from the regular the bodies that has been placed by the government to avoid questions and all that. The stage and the most final stage is what we call integration. Finally, the money re-enters into the economy looking so super clean, uh, from illegitimate money to legal money that has been obtained. It comes out as a, I mean, it comes out as a revenue to the from the business. It comes out as a profit and all stuff. According to the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, it says that between 800 billion and 2 trillion of the world's GDP it's lost through businesses, through illegal businesses and stuff. And that's around, and a significant chunk of that amount, it happens here in Africa. So, right, if you've driven along Mombasa Nairobi highway, you'd have noticed a lot of petrol stations. Like you can find 5 petrol stations within 200 meters apart. That should raise a question. If not an alarm, it should raise a question to you. Because why do you put like place 5 petrol stations within, and most of them are actually not operational, like they're not actually busy. And the reason as to why petrol stations are they are vigilant in conducting money laundering scheme in Kenya, because one, it requires a lot of itself. It requires high cash heavy. It's a high cash heavy business. What do I mean? It means that you need like a lot of cash to start that business alone. And another thing is that it becomes so hard, to audit fuel volume. You know, the operational manager can say that we have managed to maybe sell around six 6,000 volumes, and but in the real sense, they have sold or they have sold around 10,000 volumes of oil. It becomes so difficult to audit. That's the reason as to why the petrol stations business, it's a good business if you are conducting money laundering schemes and all that. Another thing is that the supply chain itself, it's layered. Is one term that's in the whole system. It's called layering. Layering is where like the whole system, it's owned by the operation. You can find that the supply to the contribution and all that. It's a whole system. So raising a question, it becomes so difficult to audit and do all stuff. The petrol station business is not the only business that can conduct money laundering. We have real estate. We have forex bureaus, the currency exchange and all stuff. We have hospitality and tourism, and it's a whole scheme. Now, the real question comes in: how can we counter that business? Right. Money laundering isn't just a crime thriller concept. It's a sophisticated business, a sophisticated system, a sophisticated cocoon that it requires a lot of curiosity. It requires a lot of questioning, and it requires also people who are so vigilant to counter it, because it affects the Kenyan economy. It affects the economy of everyone. So I'd like to stop at that point, and my hope is that you leave from this podcast or from this session a little bit more informed, a little bit more curious, that you're able to ask questions when these are when ABCD is happening around you. Why is it happening? You get to question the status quo, because things and things cannot be run in the same way. Yeah, and there's a favorite quote. It says that change becomes begins with yourself. So if you found this episode so valuable, share it with someone that you'd want that person to know. Leave a comment, leave a review, and you know, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button down there to get notified on our weekly episode. Thank you so much, Brand Billion Podcast. Yeah, out.